Guys, I'm here in the library right in front of our Vietnam memorial for our alumni who gave the great sacrifice serving our nation. This next conversation is probably the most important conversation I might be sharing with you all semester as we talk to three veterans from three wars in recent U.S. history. It will be a look at the war in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Guys, I hope you give your attention to this one, this special moment of decades, the wars.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Another plane just hit. Right, oh my God, another plane has just hit. It hit another building.
Guys, welcome back to a very special class today. Today we're going to be looking at the wars that we've been discussing in class through recent U.S. history. The best way to understand those wars are to have a conversation with those gentlemen that actually experienced it. Gunnery Sergeant Samuel Deeds is here with us. Welcome. Gunnery Sergeant Deeds was a 14 years Marine. He spent enlisted in 1997, had a tour in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2005. We also have Major John Flanagan here with us. Major had two tours of duty in Vietnam, 1967 through 1968, and again in 69 through 70. And then we also have Colonel John Cline, who had two tours in Afghanistan in 2005 and 6, and then a second tour in 2016. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be.
It is very important that we have these talks, and so I appreciate it. You three have all been part of different wars that the United States have been involved with. Major Flanagan, you were drafted for Vietnam, but you'd already explored into enlisting, and Colonel Cline and Gunnery Sergeant Deeds, both of you had willingly enlisted prior to our engagements. What made you three willing to join the fight? And we're actually going to start off with you, Major Flanagan.
I graduated about a year and a half before that from high school. Me, my buddies in Brooklyn, hanging around, and the draft is looming. The war is getting bigger. We know we're going to get drafted at some point, so we decided we'd go shop for a service. And we visited the Air Force and the Marines and the Navy and the Army. And I liked the Air Force because they got blue suits, and I really looked good in blue. But I mean, that's the truth, guys. But they all had this 4-year enlistment, and I just came out of high school. I know what 4 years, or in my case 4.5 years, is like, and I didn't want to spend that much time outside of Brooklyn. So I learned that you could push your draft. You essentially could volunteer for the draft, and it's only 2 years. And I said, well, heck, 2 years I can do, standing on my head. So that's what I did. The other three guys, Jimmy McKee went to the Marine Corps and served his time in Vietnam. Tommy Jennings and Jimmy Hendren went into the Air Force. 3 of them spent there 4 years and got out, and Flanagan stayed for 20. So, that's how I get into it. I knew I was going to go. I just wanted to pick the time and place.
So you weren't going to do 4 years, but you decided to do 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, no. I was always going to get out, but every time I got ready to get out, they dangled something else in front of me. I mean, I was in the Army. I came in at 3 February 1966. The 7th of February, 4 days later, I got discharged from the Army so I could re-enlist as a regular Army to go to flight school, because flight school was only going to be 1 more year. Hey, this is pretty cool. Flight school is about a 9-month long. Okay. So if I failed flight school, I reverted back to my original contract of 2 years. So Flanagan's thing was, okay, 2 months of basic training, 9 months of flight school. That's 11. You get a month off each year. That's 12. Flunk out, I quit the last day of flight school. Okay, so now I'm down to 11 months. The tour in Vietnam is 12 months. Flanagan goes home. That was the deal. Except that you sort of get caught up with this stuff, and it's like, okay, go. So then after Vietnam, I was getting ready to get out. I got married after my first tour. Second tour, I was going back, and I was getting ready to go to get out in the year, and they dangled fixed wing school, airplane school, and it was only going to be 1 more year. So Flanagan said, "Oh, you get 1 more year flying airplanes. That's a piece of cake." Well, that's how they got me. 20 years later, it's like, time to go home, and I did.
Colonel Cline,
Yes.
what made you enlist?
Yeah. So I kind of had a long way about how I ended up, but I think it's probably good for a young individual to hear that you don't always have to make your first choice and stick with it. It's okay to grow, and what I mean by that is, so I out of high school, I went to Murray State University. Was recruited to shoot on their rifle team, Division I, full ride. So I did. And after 2 years of that, I thought I wanted to go to the Naval Academy. I had received an appointment out of high school, but I wasn't too sure I wanted to be gone, kind of like Major Flanagan, John was saying. And so I went to Murray State. After 2 years, I reapplied for the Naval Academy and got accepted. So I went. And I had every intention of flying fast movers for the Navy.
Okay.
And my father, the reason for that is my father was a Vietnam veteran and a helicopter pilot. And so I'd been exposed to flight my entire life. From the time I was about 8 years old, I could probably identify 7, 8 different rotary wing aircraft by sound alone. And a lot of time, how many were in the formation. And I know John knows that. So anyway, I got part of the process of when you want to fly is a flight physical. And I could not take the flight physical till after I arrived at the Naval Academy. And I failed the flight physical. Wasn't going to be able to fly. So that put me on a restricted line that said you can be on surface warfare support ships, oceanography, or MI. And I said, I want to be an Army officer. So I left the Naval Academy. I needed to make some money. I needed to get back in school. So I enlisted.
Okay.
And enlisted as being a tanker. So went through basic training at IT, tanking, went back to school, finished my degree, went to officer candidate school for the Army, commissioned. 27 years, 6 months, 23 days later, I retired as a colonel in the Army, an Army officer. So, but the whole point of wanting to join in the first place was just the propensity to serve with my family. My father, again, was a Vietnam veteran and a retired Army aviator as a CW4, a little over 10,000 hours of predominantly rotary wing, some fixed wing in there. My grandfather was a master sergeant in World War II. Uncles my brother-in-law as a retired major, and just a lot of my family served. And I knew I had always felt the desire to serve in some way. And so that's what drew me to it, was a little bit of bonus, a little bit of having a job guarantee. But more than anything, to sign the paperwork was because I just knew I always wanted to do that.
Family legacy.
It is, yeah.
Gunnery Sergeant Deeds.
Mine's quick and easy. I mean, these guys, what made it so difficult. Now, I grew up in Maine, central Maine for the most part. Population-wise, we were considered northern Maine. The only thing to really do is, work in the lumber industry or one of the other trades. And, I was good with my hands, but I wanted to do something more. I watched the recruiters come to the school, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines. And, who doesn't like a good set of dress blue? So I joined the Marine Corps. I wish it was that easy. I went to the Marines and wanted to be infantry, and they didn't have anything available. So I left the Marine Corps office and had one foot in the Army office, and the Marine Corps recruiter grabbed me and goes, "Oh, let's make a phone call." So they actually called to Recruiting Station Louisville, which is where the headquarters are for this area, and they made a trade for an aviation job, for an infantry job, and I ended up in the Marine Corps Infantry. I graduated June 1, 1997. June 4, 1997, I'm at Parris Island, South Carolina, getting ready to go through 13 weeks of Marine Corps recruit training. Stayed in the infantry for 9 years. 3 of that I spent as a recruiter in the greater Cincinnati area, out of recruiting substation Fairfield, Ohio, and then I got transferred to Florence, Kentucky. Again, headquarters was Louisville, and then returned back to the infantry. And then after I got injured, ended up working with the most advanced aircraft in today's military, the V-22 Osprey. And I worked there for 5 years, and then finally was medically retired after 30-ish surgeries, and retired. And the day before my birthday in 2011, I retired. So it was a great birthday present for me.
Wow.
Happy birthday and happy retirement.
That's it.
So, all right, guys, I've traveled extensively to do some humanitarian work, and every time I've landed into a new country, just landing on the tarmac, getting off the plane, there's a different smell. You can just smell a new country. What were and we can go in any order in this, what were your very first thoughts when you guys were deployed, whether it was in Vietnam, Afghanistan, or Iraq? What was the first thoughts that came across your first smells when you were on this brand new country, which happened to be a war zone?
I thought before I even landed in Iraq, on the way in, we were on a C-130 out of Kuwait to go into a base called TQ, I think it was southwest of Fallujah. And we're going in there, and this person, the pilots, I mean, they've got us going this way, they have us going this way. I think we were upside down at one point in time, I don't know. But it was crazy, but we were receiving fire going into TQ. And, this was January of 2005. The big push through Fallujah, the main battle of Fallujah, just took place November, December of 2004. So when we landed, the wind was blowing just right. We could still smell basically Fallujah burning. The morning when we woke up, you could see the smoke from Fallujah. And then, of course, the next day or two, we rolled through, and, the buildings are just crumbled, and there's smoke everywhere. And you can see, holes from artillery from tanks or artillery from howitzers, and bullet holes everywhere. So I mean, at that point, it became real that we were in for something. But I actually had combat experience before that in 2004 in Haiti. We ended up with going there for civil unrest. Aristide did some pretty awful things, and the U.S. got them evacuated. So I experienced my first real true combat there. I mean, we've been shot at before during different things, but it was not even close. When you have the windows blowing out right beside your head, it's real. And that happened in Haiti in 2004. And fortunately for us, we took 0 casualties. One of the Marines I served with was shot, one. So we ended up with 1 Purple Heart from Haiti in 2004. So I mean, that was the thing. And then of course, I still smell the smells. I still smell, like certain things I see reminds me of being back in Iraq or Haiti. And I was in Haiti in '99 too, doing humanitarian stuff, and it was way different. I mean, even for a third world country, so much changes in 5 years. And, it's been, I got injured in 05, so we're about 16 years, and there's still certain smells that bring me right back to that first time stepping off the plane at TQ in Iraq.
I agree. I would say that the smells are what bring back a lot of the memories. It's kind of like listening to music, will bring back, certain memories with songs during different time periods. And I know we had the same deal coming into Kabul on a C-130 doing missile drills because we were firing chaff coming in because we'd been shot at. The quick, fast, in a hurry down on the ground. And the thing that kind of got me is going into a war zone, I found out before we got there, because we hadn't been issued any ammunition, is that we would not get any until we put feet on the ground. And so I deployed with a 12-guy advisor team. And obviously with my dad's Vietnam experience, and I'm sure John has similar to that, that was a little crazy. So when I was in my pre-deployment training, I received about an 18-inch by 5-inch by 5-inch box in the mail that was heavy. I opened it up, and it was enough 5.56 ammunition from the civilian market for me to distribute amongst my team. We at least had one magazine of ammunition to come into country with. But we did walk off the plane, and they gave us our ammo, and hopped on buses with curtains closed, and they hightailed us to the nearest FOB, Forward Operating Base, to go ahead and in-process us and get us where we needed to go. But today, I'll smell, usually in the winter here in Kentucky, I'll smell certain wood burning, and it will remind you of those feelings and being there. And it just does. It's, in Afghanistan, at least, other than being in the cities, it was like those individuals still live in biblical times. Mud huts, wood to heat with, and wood is scarce there. It really will bring back those memories. And I associate a lot with the music as well.
Well, so it sort of brings back some memories there, talking on the approach that Gunny's got there. We traveled, a number of things are different. Number one, you arrived with a unit. We were individual replacements. Right. We were tourists, so we didn't know where the heck we were going, who we were going to be with, or whatever. On the aircraft, I had a lot of my classmates from flight school. But we went over on either Flying Tiger or Pan Am. I don't remember which one on that. And you're on a stretch 8 or a stretch DC-9. And these guys shot the same kind of an approach going into Cameron Bay. And if you've ever been in a DC-9, and this guy is janking and janking, and it's like, boom, all of a sudden, you're at 25 and you're hitting the tarmac on there. You taxi on in, they open the door, and you go, holy crap, it's hot. I mean, the heat just, whoa. And then they finally, get you off the aircraft. Now we're in khakis on this, dress shoes and everything else. We don't have any guns. We don't have anything. We're just tourists. You hit the door, and you get the Vietnamese smell. It smells like fuel and diesel burning, and what we later come to know as the honey pots that are there burning the stuff. And it's just like, wow. And then you look off to the side, and here's a covered building, and there's 150 guys there dressed up just like you, but they're clean, and they're screaming at you. They want to get on the damn airplane because they're going home. So it was pretty wild. But you talked about ammunition and stuff. We didn't get any weapons at all until we were with the unit with B Troop. So that was 8 days later, I mean, it was
Wow.
wild. I mean, you get off, you expect, that you should have a weapon or something, but no, they put you on a bus and it's got chain link over the windows so nobody could throw a grenade in. It was an eye opener.
So all of you guys, you were immediately made aware of your situation, and training should prepare you for this. And you're going to hear stories, but the expectations aren't going to be the same. I mean, no matter how well you train, no matter the stories you heard, those expectations are not going to be the same until you start experiencing that real life moment. When did it go from a perspective of what you imagined to the reality? How long did it take? Was it an immediate kind of reaction?
I think for Iraq, it was almost immediate, only because especially social media was just coming online, and the media is more present, than it was back, obviously like Vietnam, and they were only reporting certain things. But there's so many different media channels, but there's no amount of training that can train you for what to experience or how your mind, or your body's going to handle it. I mean, it rained on us. I can't tell you how long in Iraq, and it was cold. And it's January, but you're in the desert, and it was very cold. For Haiti, I think for Haiti in 2004, it was probably, 2 or 3 weeks before I received fire for the very first time. And there were guys that were there months prior to me that took part in actual peacemaking missions that turned into peacekeeping, that turned into humanitarian aid. And I arrived during the humanitarian aid piece, and like Major Flanagan said, you arrive with nothing. John said that. I came into Haiti fresh off recruiting duty, and it was me and 10 guys maybe that I picked up from the School of Infantry, and they're like, "Oh, Sergeant Deeds, you've been to Haiti before. You're going back." So I had 3 days to prepare and get gear for these guys that had just graduated from the School of Infantry. And so I arrived. We came in on, I think it was a C-130 that way too, from Cherry Point, North Carolina into Haiti, and I had no idea where I was going to be. I sat in Port-au-Prince for a week before I got assigned my unit. And I had a gun, I had an M16, but I didn't have any ammo. I had nothing else. I had my gear. So I went back, and I, would call my wife every day. I would get on the computer every day. I'd play, Risk with whoever was back, or I'd just sit there and sunbathe. Nothing like getting a nice suntan in the Caribbean, right? So, and then like I said, Iraq was way different. I mean, it was almost instantaneous, because you still get those smells of, like John said, the diesel burning, or the honey pots, because they were still burning the feces. You had to get rid of it some way. They didn't have the sump trucks and pump trucks at some of the off bases, so you have to dig big trenches and burn it, and you're burning it with diesel, and somebody's out there stirring it, and this, that, and the other. And then of course the smell of gunpowder is always fresh in the air, because something's always going on, or an RPG or a grenade or a mortar or something like that is flying over your head or whistling over your head. So it's almost instantaneous when I arrived in Iraq in 2005. And I know people are different. Everybody's different. And later deployments, it was like nothing happened. I mean, even into 2009, 2010, everything was really winding down in Iraq, even though conflict was still happening.
Yeah, I had a lot of those same feelings. I think that again, Chad, what you talked about, and John is there seems to be some more similarities based on time, with Iraq and Afghanistan. But man, everybody says the smells are the same in the third world countries. When you go, I would say I deployed as a combat advisor, so I knew that I was going to teach, train, assist soldiers of the Afghan National Army. I was initially told before we would go that we would go and mentor the leadership of a battalion, about 450 Afghan soldiers from private all the way up through their commander, teaching them methods to train, document, and prepare their soldiers for combat operations. we were told it'd take us about 6 months to do that. Then we would begin taking these soldiers on some confidence building missions like traffic control points, humanitarian missions, civil support missions, that sort of thing. And when I was like, okay, I'm game, whatever they need me for. Well, I show up 9 days later, they said, you're going to be assigned to an Afghan National Army battalion, a Kandak, that's been operational in the war for 3 years. They're located at this grid that's about 4.5 hour drive away, which is only about 50 clicks because of the terrain. Right. And they've been conducting combat operations for 3 years ago. So 9 days later, when I linked up with them and my team, it was game on. And the pace rarely changed the entire time. So some of the folks that were with us actually did what we were told. They needed a few of us to go do something else, and we were picked to do it. And so I'll tell you, as a competitive shooter, I shot high-powered rifles all my life. Well, since I was 8 years old, and I know what the sound of the supersonic round flying over your head makes the crack, because I pulled the butts before the targets, and it's relatively easy to get used to getting shot at. It's not necessarily too easy to get used to getting hit. You expect the cracks, you expect that type of thing, and the whistles of the mortar rounds and the rockets and that. But until you get that first contact, you don't really know, and you realize that once that first contact happens, that it was all, just in your head before, but it becomes real pretty quick.
So you're
I know the first combat assault flying in, you fly, I'm in the right seat. I got a squad of Blues infantry scouts on board, and the first of the night had a template to go in. When we were going in, we had 6. The old man would mark the LZ with a pair of rockets, and then gunships would fly alongside of us. As we started slowing down, they were firing more rockets. The door gunners were firing, and you look in the back, and the Blues are gone. They're out on the skids, hanging on, holding on to the bottom of the seat. And when you come in, you don't touch down. You just slow down. You get down to a hover, and those guys jump, and then you just take off. And it's like, holy crap! I mean, everybody seems to know exactly what they're doing, yet nobody explained that. I mean, it's one of those, you find the formation in, you're doing this stuff. Heck, it was unreal. I mean, in school, it was always make sure you got your seatbelts on, you got a shoulder on. These guys are out there, walking on the skids, for Christ's sake. And then you're coming on out, and it's not a pretty formation coming out. What it is, as soon as you dropped your guys, you did him out, and you caught up on the climb. And then you went back and you got the next guys coming in. If anybody got hurt jumping off the skids or got shot, we would turn around and one of the aircraft go back in and medevac them out. I mean, it was a heck of a way to learn, but you did it, and and that was essentially a cold LZ. There was nobody shooting back at us. Going into one when we dropped our Blues off, and they got surrounded into the little rice paddy there, and we had to bring the reaction force into the center of it. Then you're talking about some tightness, because it's like they're waiting for you. They know where you're going. That's where your guys are, and you just hunker down, fly the formation, going straight on in. I mean, it's something that it's wild. I mean, you grow up quick, and you don't forget those things. It's a strange thing. You never forget the smell of all of the cordite and the fire coming off the stuff, and then when you pick the guys back up, the smell of the grunt getting back on board. It's just, wow.
Yeah, we stink.
Wow. But we love you, guys. We love you.
Lucky enough to go. I was lucky enough to go 47 days without a shower, and got picked up. So I know the deal. No change. A 3 to 5 day mission turned into 47 days.
God
you were
bless.
prepared to stay 3 to 5, and 47 days at about 13,000 foot altitude. But everybody smells the same there, so you get used to that. You know, the pilots that get to go back and lounge around until it's time to come get you, they're all smelling like Stetson.
Well, there is a reason why I went to flight school instead of OCS.
I don't disagree. I got you.
I guess my first indication is that you had to score higher to get into flight school than you did OCS. So I think it was 112 to get into OCS and 115 to flight school.
There you go.
So all three of you, even though it was across 3 different generations of, 3 different decades, you share some of the same stories, some of the same kind of experiences, kind of thing. When you look back upon these times, what are some of your more moments that you're really proud of and look back fondly in this even though it was very difficult, but you're still fond of what you did?
Training and leading Marines, the camaraderie. You know, I was very unfortunate. I was involved in 2 improvised explosive device attacks, or basically 2 roadside bomb attacks. I was on foot both times. The first one was maybe 3 feet from me. But fortunate for me, the Army Corps of Engineers came in and put a fresh layer of hot top on the dirt road. So that took I guess the most of the blast. I did have to send one of my Marines home. He's still alive. He, was injured. And then a month later, I'm getting blown up again. But yeah, I think being able to bring all my guys home is probably the moment for me that, everybody's alive, everybody's well. We lost 8 guys during my first deployment, and then we lost another 17 during the second deployment. But that first deployment, that first real combat deployment, to be able to bring everybody home, to know that you train them to the best of your ability and the way that you've been trained to be, and it's lessons learned from Vietnam, it's lessons learned from Korea, it's lessons learned from World War I and World War II, and that's why we have so many of the similarities, because we still apply today, what John and John went through in Iraq and Afghanistan and Vietnam and those that came before us in World War II, World War I, and Korea. So it's just, even though we evolve and medical evolves, we really don't. I mean, it's simple tasks that accomplish the mission, and that's the biggest thing no matter what branch of service you're in. Everything's, doctorate's the same. And the mission, the end state is the same. It's, it's just trying to figure out how to work with some Army guys. That's what the difference is.
Yeah, the Marines kept trying to steal our crayons when they get hungry.
Only the red ones. Only the red ones.
John?
Well, I think that, there's a couple as I thought about it. I think the one that is that we were able to help. So when we got a pink team out on top of an infantry company, and they got guys that are wounded, and it's a hot LZ, and nobody will go in. Medevac had a rule at certain times where it had to be cold for 30 minutes before they would go in, and I was a hospital commander making that decision, not the pilots. Our guys could call back to the headquarters, to the ops, and I could say, I'll go get them. I go out to my aircraft and have a squad on there, and we'd go out and we'd pull the wounded out. And just by being there, you can see the other grunts down there. It's just the look in their eyes. So that's the ability to help is the thing that you're sort of proud of. The other thing on my second tour, which is totally different. In the BOQs at the train, we had a doctor, an Army doctor, who was with one of the civil aid kind of groups, and he had a hospital clinic downtown the train. And I went down there just to see what it was. And we went in there, we were walking past the room, and there was this little kid in there, and he really looked terrible. And the family is in there because the family comes from the village and everybody stays in the same room. And I said, what's up with him? And he said, well, we got to give him blood, but we don't have any. I said, I get O positive. He said, okay. So I gave a pint of blood. And on the way back, stopped in the room, and color came back to his face. You know, that's how.
Wow.
Get it. That's a great thing to be able to do. Yeah, and I think that boils down to it's what both of y'all said. It's being able to do what you're asked to do and what you know to do and what you feel's right. Just being able to do that kind of stuff and choosing to do those types of things. Nobody told you to go in there and do that. Yeah, nobody told Sam to what he had to do. They gave him the tools, and your upbringing, your beliefs, the education that you have, military, civilian, however you get exposure in life is what carries you through most all those things. And just being able to do those things, regardless of your motivation, I think is a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, so many people don't want to do that. And you know what? That's okay. We all chose to do that. Everybody that's serving, today, you chose to pick your poison when the draft was coming up. Yeah, you chose to, knew it was coming. You chose to pick your poison. And I think that's big is, for the generation after Vietnam, there's not a soul in the military that was drafted. Everybody there is a volunteer.
Yeah.
And I think being able to do it, I think, for the propensity to serve is I was proud to do things for my grandfather. I was proud to do things for my father. I was proud to do things for the people that I was working with and for. People, regardless of your level, somebody is the boss and somebody looks up. And being able to do those things because you're able, that means a lot.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's important to note that from World War I to present day, a total of 7.2% of the population has served or are currently serving. And that's Reserve, National Guard, all the way to your active forces. 7.2%. That's not a lot for the U.S. population from World War I to today. You know what I mean? And then in less than that, I'd say it's probably a little bit higher now because Iraq, Afghanistan's been going on so long. But I would say maybe 2 to 3% of that have actually seen real combat. Not just deploying to a combat zone and sitting in a big tent somewhere on a big base with Starbucks and Pizza Hut, but actually out in the stuff on an almost daily basis. And, that's not a big number either of actually seeing combat and experiencing combat. So, I mean, I think that's very important. I mean, you take your class size, there's 100 people in it, 7 people from that class.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that you take the whole population. It's
just not that big.
It's not at all. And especially since, like John Cline said, after Vietnam, it is a completely volunteer force. I mean, even Mr. Flanagan, who, he volunteered, even though his draft number may be coming up, he still volunteered to go. And there's a lot of guys and girls that are like that, especially guys in Vietnam that said, oh, I got a low draft number. I want to be able to pick my own branch. I'd
rather fly than walk.
Yeah, I want to go. Yeah, I want to go do what I want to do. I don't want somebody dictating my life for me, and that's huge.
Now, fellas,
You know, you talk about. Oh, I'm sorry, Chet. You
Yeah,
talk about the time in combat and stuff. I saw a report in the last month or two where they said that the average soldier in World War II, although he was in there for 3 years, spent 40 days in actual combat. And in Vietnam, beyond 200 days in actual combat. And I'm sure it's the same in Iraq and Afghanistan, the way you're out there fighting every day. So there's been, you know, an increase in exposure to that line of work.
well, let's talk about this increase of exposure then, because all three of you are eventually going to come home. Major Flanagan, you come home to a country that is very torn during Vietnam. There is a countercultural movement that is not welcoming our soldiers. Gunnery Sergeant, I mean, you're deployed after actually our president had actually said mission accomplished and the war was over. And then Colonel Cline, you're involved with the war that we've been in the longest and we are currently still engaged in, but it's really not one that is in the news. So what was it like for you guys to come home? What was that experience like coming home?
So I'll start. I'll tell you that obviously my dad and I had a lot of conversations about how it was not so inviting to come home. I think you'll hear from John. I had been on some welcome home groups that were there when soldiers came back, and because I didn't want them to feel that way, and I don't think the nation was set up that way, and as it was in Vietnam, and I think that the nation is overall proud and not struggling for identity and that, and it was different. But I can tell you. I came home on mid-tour leave, so I got 15 days off in the middle of my 367 days in 05. Actually, it was in 06 that I came home, and a couple things kind of hit me in that we landed in Ireland, come on our way back after several stops, and the stewardess on the civilian aircraft came up to me and said, "Hey, sir, I'd like you to read this. Or you need to read this." And I said, "Oh, okay, why am I reading this? Because there's 400 of us on the plane." And they said, "Well, sir, you're the ranking man on the plane." And I said, "Well, if I'm the ranking man on the plane, hey, Captain, you read it." I just delegated it down to somebody else to read it. But basically what it said was, you're still on duty, behave, because we're going to let you off the plane here in Ireland for an hour. Get back on, and we're flying into the U.S. So, maintain your military bearing and be a good individual, good citizen. And you're not allowed to drink alcohol. Well, I mean, this is the first time we've been back in a long time. And so I set the example, stepped off the plane, ordered 2 Irish beers from the bar there, and the plane partook, and everybody was very behaved and did the right things. But I get home, and being the ranking man on the plane, they let me off first. No, sir, you have to get off first. Okay. So I get off the plane, and I had all I had was my carry-ons at the time, and down going through all of the shuttles to get to the from the international terminal to the domestic terminal and on and on. And I'm walking up these stairs instead of taking the escalator because I'm faster and I don't want to stand in line. And I'm the first guy in uniform to crest above the ground floor there. And as soon as I stepped above and could see, there was about maybe 600 people there waving little American flags, cheering. And they just erupted in a loud, patriotic scream, holler, hello, yay. And it scared me. I jumped and I looked behind me because I thought, some rock star was behind me or something. And when I looked back around, it was for me. Yeah. And it was for everybody that was coming up those steps behind me. They were cheering for us. And I really thought about what those Vietnam veterans did not get. They came and handed me an American flag and a little beanie baby that was dressed in camouflage that I took home to my daughter, and hugged me. And I really thought, there is no way this is for me. You know, some superstars right behind me. And there was a superstar right behind me. Every other soldier that came up and crested that hill, those steps and that. And I was overwhelmed and very appreciative of that feedback and what they, you know, projected towards myself and individually every other person that came up there with me, right then and there. It was an amazing feeling. And I'll tell you, I run into Vietnam veterans on a regular basis, and we'll swap a quick story, and I'll shake their hand and tell them, thank you for your service. And there are most of them that will tell me, I appreciate that. That's the first time anybody has ever thanked me. That happens today all the time. And John, before this gets done, I don't want to forget, thank you for your service, because I really do appreciate it.
Thank you guys too.
I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we had so many. I was sort of lucky. I mean, coming home, because it wasn't with a big unit coming through. It was as soon as we get off the military aircraft, they bust us over to the civilian terminal, and then we all went home, kind of thing. Second tour, saw some Hare Krishnas there in San Francisco. You know, with their stuff anyway. But I mean, I got home and we didn't have a whole bunch of stuff, except I got engaged before I went over, and it came time to go pick up my wife from her last day of work in Manhattan. And she said, wear your uniform. Okay. So I got my uniform on. I took the train over to Lower Manhattan. I'm walking up past Madison Square Garden, going to the Sears building. As I step up on a curb in front of the building, somebody said something from the crowd. I don't know to this day what it was, but I stopped. I turned on my heel, and I wanted to kill him. But I didn't. I turned around, and I went inside. I believe, I'm proud with all of the stories of the insults and the spitting and all of the other stuff, that more of our guys didn't end up in prison for taking them to task. But so yeah, there was a lot of that stuff, but there were a lot of people who respected us, you know, family and friends and that. And then I was sheltered because I got married. I went to Fort Walters, and that's my guys who were there. So, but yeah, it was bad. You seen it on the news? It's like, what the hell did we fight for? And then you go, well, we fought so they have the freedoms that they got. I'm sorry, I get emotional about that stuff.
No, it's quite all right.
It's okay.
And Major Flanagan, on behalf of all of my students, you know, thank you for your service to our country. Because of what you did, you know, my guys are able to grow up in a society that is far better for the sacrifice you made. And although you did not get the thank yous when you came back home, thank you for what you did, and welcome back home, soldier. So I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So, Gunnery Sergeant, what was it like for you?
I came back a little bit different. I got blown up on March 20th. Ended up with a 1/3 open tibia fracture, multiple shrapnel wounds to my upper and lower left thigh, my right groin, 2 broken metacarpals on my left hand, piece of shrapnel on my left forearm, my right hand, and I got a piece of my head here somewhere still that they can't figure out how I got in there. But I came back on a medevac. I went from Abu Ghraib prison is where we were stationed. So I went from Abu Ghraib prison into Balad, which was a huge air base, a huge trauma facility there, probably the leading trauma facility in Iraq at the time. Spent the night there, and then they put me on a big jet to Landstuhl, Germany. Spent 4 or 5 days in Landstuhl, Germany, getting cleansed, and every wound that I had getting cleaned up and rinsed out, and new bandages and morphine pumps and this and that to prepare me for my trip home. From Landstuhl, I went to Andrews Air Force Base, spent the night there, and waited for a doctor to come over to figure out if I was going to either stay at Bethesda, which is now Bethesda Walter Reed. It's one joint medical facility up there in DC now, or if I was going to be sent home. And the doctors in Iraq did a good enough job stabilizing my leg that they were able to send me back to my home hospital. So I came back on a C-130 to Cherry Point on a litter again in an ambulance back to my home hospital. And my welcome home was my wife standing over me and 2 guys from our remain behind from my command to welcome me home. So that was my welcome home. And then I spent days in the hospital and days recovering. But I actually my doctor told me that I would not walk until X date. And I pushed myself every day. That way, when my guys got home in August, I think it was August that year, August or September, that they would not see me on crutches. I had a limp, but I was not on crutches. And I didn't want my guys to see me that way. And maybe I was just a little vain myself at the time, but I pushed myself to the limit, and I'm hurting from it now. I mean, matter of fact, I've had the rod replaced, and the original one is up there on the wall. Let's see if I can. Here. So that rod,
there we go.
Yeah, on that big plaque, it came out of my leg in 2007, having it replaced. And that's just a constant reminder of, be well, be healthy, recover the way the doctors tell you to, but don't be afraid to push yourself. And to date, I've had 42 surgeries, and I've got another one coming up on March 8th. They're going to replace a disc in my neck, so another big surgery coming up for me. And 43 is good enough for Richard Petty, so I guess it's good enough for me too. So let's make it happen.
Tell you what, I'll chime in one last thing, or from my point of view anyway, is my entire career and somewhat my childhood, with my father being in the service, I felt like that I was prepared for the military, and at times very prepared to deploy, prepared for combat as it was described to you. I felt like that I was pretty prepared to go do what I was asked to do. Few things not, and John kind of alluded to that, is wasn't prepared for the civilian and certainly the children casualties that I ran into. And probably just as much, and a cause too, is I wasn't prepared to come home so fast with all of those things that you had to deal with. Within 24 hours from being in a combat zone, you're stepping on an aircraft and you're back in the United States. I mean, it's fast. And kind of the funny thing is, it took me, I guess when I came home from leave, it took me 27 hours, but it was time to go back. Same route. It only took 19. They wanted you back. But really, you don't get prepared for, at least not my time frame, and I'm assuming Gunny Deeds' time frame, about almost identical for those. And probably, and I know for John as well, is I understand things have changed, but it takes a lot of time to make those changes for soldiers, that you are certainly not prepared for some of the things you deal with, and certainly not prepared to be home, reintegrating into society. Everything from, in your mind, time stopped back home, but it didn't. My wife started and finished her master's degree while I was gone. My kids never missed a beat, going to soccer practice and dance practice. Life continued, and your life significantly changed. You don't come home the same person, and it's very challenging. And I know that there's things in place to change that, but it takes a long time to figure those things out and do that right. And we certainly aren't prepared to come home. And that's significantly different than your preparation to go.
What can my students do for guys like yourself and our veterans that are still deployed in Afghanistan and coming back home? What is it that they need to know, or what can they do to be there to support our Vietnam veterans, our veterans from Iraq, or veterans from Afghanistan?
I think, there are so many different nonprofits that cater to either veterans or active duty or both, wounded veterans. Take the time and go volunteer at one of their events. It doesn't matter if you're serving food or if you're busting a table or what, but just sit there and listen. You'll hear some of the conversations that are going on. And, some of the language might be a little strong, but, that's a lot of service members when they get together. Some of the language flows freely, if you will. But just listen. And that's the biggest thing. And it took me forever to understand. I mean, I came back in 2005. And I didn't start opening up to anybody until probably 2008 or 2009. I was on a long road trip with a friend of mine who happens to be my oldest son's godfather. And I'm like, listen, I don't need you to understand, but I need you to listen. He was a Marine. He was a career Marine himself. Worked on the CH-46 and now on the V-22 with me. And he looked at me like I had 5 eyeballs. Like he had no idea. I mean, even within our own service, there are guys and girls that don't understand what combat veterans have gone through or are experiencing. And, there was a thing of a question. I was preparing a Marine for promotion board. And I asked him what the stresses of combat war, fear of the unknown, fog of war, this, that, the other. And then one Marine from the distance says, oh, there's no hot water, there's no iced coffee, Pizza Hut's out of pepperoni. I mean, experience is different, from even your job field within the service. So just be there, be present. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. A welcome home are always appreciated, especially from the younger generation that your class don't know what 9/11 is, right? Unless it's taught to them. They never experienced it. There are guys and girls serving right now that never experienced 9/11. They've seen it on TV, they've seen video clips, but they do not remember 9/11.
Right.
So, I mean,
it's also important that it takes everybody to get the job done. So there are, individuals that when they deployed, they may have never stepped foot off of a forward operating base. My youngest daughter's getting ready to go sleigh riding. They're behind me a little bit, so it's all right. It takes everybody. So just because you didn't deploy as an infantryman, and I spent 367 days in Afghanistan and only got to sleep in a bed maybe 100 nights because I was out. But there's people there that spent every night on base, and they internally you may bust on them and talk about it, but you know what? They're part of your team.
Right.
Everybody deserves to thank you equally, and it's appreciative, all the way around. So like Sam said, volunteering. I know that Sam and I have a common group that we have been around with, Kentucky Wounded Heroes, and a great organization in Kentucky, helping the wounded heroes and are getting good support, and just visiting with, talking with, that thank you goes a long way to everybody, and I'm very appreciative of that.
It sure does. I know we started USA Cares here in Radcliffe, and still with them. And they do some good work. So good welcome home, and support those who support our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guard. Did I say Marines? I hope so.
No, but Lassen's okay, right, Sam?
That's right. As long as we're there, I don't care.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think it's a great advice to give to my guys, is to find organizations here in our community, be willing to volunteer. And it sounds like to listen, be there to listen, and then just, again, say thank you. Because a lot of times I think my guys, Major Flanagan, you could account for this, is that a lot of times when I see a veteran from Vietnam, they're proudly wearing a hat distinguishing that they're a veteran out. And so just for my guys to go up to someone such as yourself and say thank you for your service would be a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's the truth.
My kids, they were both born after I was injured. They've been, raised around me, obviously, and things that I've experienced, things that I've done on a national level. And I'll watch them go up to Vietnam veterans and welcome them home. And as a father, how can you not be proud of that, right? You're raising them to do the right thing without you having to tell them what the right thing is. But you guys have a pretty good football program down there at Trinity.
Yeah, we do all right.
Yeah, I know. So, get with the coach, and a lot of us, like I grew up playing soccer. My school wasn't big enough. My graduating class was 83 people, maybe if that. So I've up here. There's a couple of good football schools up here in Cincinnati too that I've been able to go speak to. And, we understand what, overcoming adversity. We understand, overcoming, injury and things like, and especially leadership. And, I'm sure that you can find a veteran down there to come up and speak to the football team or whoever, about that and about their experiences, because that not only helps you as the veteran recover a little bit and heal a little bit, but it truly helps the young men and women to understand what sacrifice is, what commitment is. Because, you're committed to the football team, but after you're gone for those 4 years, what is it? You move on to college and play for another football team in hopes to make it to the NFL. When you serve, whether it's 4 years or 40 years, you've got that title of a soldier, a sailor, an airman, marine, a coast guardsman, and now whatever they're calling the Space Force. That's always going to be part of you, no matter what. And, I'm proud to be called a Marine on a daily basis. I've been out for almost 10 years, and my teammates refer to me as Gunny. I'm like, man, I'm retired. You got to leave me alone. But, and it's just like Colonel and Major. Those are ranks that are truly respected throughout the service. And, and fortunately for me, Gunnery Sergeant's one of those. And so, I get to suck it up a little bit more. And, I swell up a little bit more. But, it's just great for them young men and women to understand that, being part of the service doesn't mean that you're on that lower percentile and you can't go to college. There's extreme opportunities for you to receive your college degree, plus the experience and the intangible traits that the service treats you that you're not going to learn in the classroom.
And being invited to that stuff is healing for the veteran as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very healing for the veteran to participate as well.
Well, let me give us one last question for you guys to address. And again, we've covered 3 different wars, 3 different perspectives, but a lot of the same experiences. What is it that you want my students to know about your war that I couldn't provide for them or a textbook can provide for them, but your experience can enlighten them on? What is it what's the important thing that you want them to say about your war? This is what I need to know.
That
go ahead, John.
That the military didn't lose that war. Congress did.
Okay. Colonel?
So for me, I was in Iraq for the very first election. All right. So we helped facilitate one of the poll sites. And, you have men and women who are being able to voice their opinion for the very first time in their life. They're walking around with a pinkish purple thumb, right? So now they're walking around like this because they don't want the insurgency to know that they cast a vote.
Oh, wow.
We had rocket propellant grenades being shot over the poll site. We had mortars being shot at the poll site. It was crazy. And then I come home to hear the news. Well, only this many people turned out to vote. You know what? Even if one person turned out to vote of the entire country, that's one person that had the guts to say, I want to make a difference. We passed out soccer balls and pens and pencils and paper at one of the schools over there. And on a patrol coming back from one of our forward operating bases back to Abu Ghraib prison, I was stopped by a kid, and he was telling me that there was a bomb in the road. I'm like, whatever, bro, you're whatever. There was a bomb in the road. Our engineers came out there, found the bomb, and detonated it. All because the kid remembered me giving him a pencil or a soccer ball or a piece of paper. No matter what branch of service you're in, no matter what area you serve, you made a difference in somebody's life, whether it was somebody in the country you were in or it was the life of one of your soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. You're making an impact on somebody. And, we truly, as the United States, made a huge impact in Iraq, of the lives of those people, and in Afghanistan, the lives of those people. And I'm sure John will tell you the same thing. Is it the change that they wanted? Do they want the Western ways that we have here? No, but they have that opportunity to voice their opinion on what they do want, and they're not scared to do it anymore.
Yeah, I would agree with that in a lot of ways too. I think that one is, if you remember, one of the primary reasons we initially went into Afghanistan was because the bad guys, Al Qaeda, Taliban in some ways, and those groups, those militant groups, were in a country or piece of land really that they were uninhibited of practicing, training, and deploying from to wreak havoc around the world. And we didn't go there because the people of Afghanistan necessarily, or the citizens of Afghanistan, were rising up to fight their neighbor or the United States. Almost without exception, the people of Afghanistan like us, and want us to be there to help them. They don't necessarily want to get away from the way they do business, as far as they all don't need a car. The average family in Afghanistan was about 22 people, if I remember right, and their annual salary combined was only $2,000 a year for 22 people. They want us there. They liked us there. They like learning some things, but they still like to have their own way. Right. So I would say that what's not necessarily in the book, and you don't know until you get there, is that it's a different kind of war. We were there to get rid of the bad in the country, the really, really bad, and the really, really bad to us. But so many more good things happened about us, are happening with us being there. We're teaching them to even be more self-sufficient in the ways that they want to be, not forcing our way to them, but giving them choices. And they're proud to be able to make those choices. And they don't want the bad guys in there any more than we do. But it's a tricky place. History says that nobody wins in Afghanistan except the Afghans, because they have all the time in the world. And that's so true. It really is.
I think, one thing is you don't see in the news, and, a lot of the news reports they're trying to get their ratings, right? But you're not hearing about the electricity being brought to these villages, or the water being brought to these villages, or John touched on it earlier, mud huts. Even in some of the surrounding places outside of the big cities like Baghdad and Fallujah, people are still living in mud huts with tin roofs. And if we can go in there and help provide them a little bit of more comfort, a little bit more stability, and that's the biggest thing, stability. They'll help you out as much as they can. Like I said, we had a goat farmer come up and told us where they were storing stuff. We had other people point out bombs, and it's just, when you help them, they're going to help you. If you go in there with a bad attitude, what are you going to get in return? People with bad attitudes. Just like here in the States, you go up to somebody with a bad attitude, you're probably going to get it back. But if you go up and approach somebody in a nice, cool demeanor, they're going to reciprocate the same way. It's no different than it is here. I mean, body language is body language, and language is language, and it's universal, no matter what country I've ever been into.
Rosa Hosh Dashtabashi.
Which translates to?
Basically, have a good day and may God be with you.
Well,
Yeah,
gentlemen,
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I learned there is language by immersion, and it really helped me understand a lot more from that. I think good people are good and bad people are bad, and it's always good to help the good.
well, gentlemen, I could carry this conversation on for hours more. I'm fascinated. I know we only just barely hit the skim of your stories, but thank you for sharing so much. Colonel Cline, earlier you mentioned when you came home, it was like you were thinking a rock star was behind you, but actually all three of you and all of our men and women that serve in the U.S. Armed Forces are bigger than rock stars. So thank you guys for what you're doing for our country, and welcome back home.
Thanks,
Thank
Chad.
you.
John,
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Sam,
Yeah,
good
thank-
to see you again.
You too.
You all take care.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to your students. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Major Flanagan, Gunnery Sergeant Deeds, Colonel Cline, thank you again for your service to our country and for being a part of this class conversation. Welcome home, soldiers. Guys, there are a number of books if you want to know more about the wars that these gentlemen bravely fought in. We have available here at Trinity. Also, as Major Flanagan talked about, he wrote a book of his own experiences in Vietnam. Fellas, as always, remain awesome, be nice, stay safe, and let's do our part to honor our veterans when we see them back here at home.